Catherine, hi. You have been instrumental in making such an enormous difference in the children's yoga community. I first learned about your work in the National Kids Yoga Conference many, many years ago. You are a professor at the University of Buffalo, right? You're a yoga instructor, you're a licensed psychologist, you published 15 books, including this one, The Worry Monster, we're going to talk about today. You've published over 100 research articles as well. So you're everywhere, and the research means so much in our industry where people want to know that it makes a difference and it's effective, especially in schools. And so, could you say highlight of your career thus far?
Gosh, I feel like there's always something every year that comes up that's very exciting. Um, one thing that for people that, and I know the audience here is very interested in yoga with children, that I do have a book, Mindfulness and Yoga for Children in Schools, and I wrote it because of what you just said. And myself doing research in schools, trying to convince the administration like this is a good thing to do, that it will help the kids, and so administrators and teachers want to see research as well. And so what I did is I compiled everything into a book that really you could deliver your interest in having a yoga program at your school, by showing the research in that book. So that's one thing I think I'm very proud of. And also I'm proud of it because I truly believe in yoga and mindfulness as a tool for resiliency for children. And the more we can get schools to offer programs and opportunities for kids to learn and practice yoga, the better. I feel like that book creates a bridge.
Beautiful. I have seen that book. In fact, I'm glad you highlighted it because I went through my book list and I thought I had it. I'm sure I have, but I couldn't find it.
It's on
I'm glad you
Amazon.
highlighted it. Yes, it's on Amazon, but I highly recommend it. I'm sure I've seen it or read it at some point. While we're talking about that, let's take a subtopic. Let's briefly talk about the impact speaking of schools, of what happened in Sanitas, because we still, after all this time, we still get our community coming and saying, people still think it's religious. How do I get over that? So, do you want to speak briefly about that research that you did?
Yeah, so it was at a yoga in the schools conference where Tim Baird, I think is his name, the superintendent of the Encinitas Central School District, was presenting about a lawsuit that they were going through where there was a community member, I think also like a podcast or host or something, that was
Mm.
Christian, with a law firm. I'm not sure if it was pro bono or not, was suing the district saying that they couldn't do yoga there. They couldn't continue their yoga program because it was religious, and that there should be a separation of church and state, or schools should not have religious programs at their school. And so they were suing the district. And I, I approached him after he talked and I said, is anybody studying this? Like, is this getting documented in any way? And they hadn't yet heard from the California Appellate Court. So they had already won, I think, more locally, district maybe level, and then they were at the Appellate Court in California. And he said no. And I said, can I? And he's like, sure. And so I think one thing, his love of yoga and Encinitas, if you've ever been there, and for people in Encinitas, hey, it's the yoga capital of the United States, I would say. It's got the Yoganandas, plays the Self-Actualization Institute there. There's a yoga studio on every corner. And so the district having a yoga program made sense. And it was part of their larger social emotional learning program. So it was one of the quadrants of four quadrants where they were really doing some really interesting social emotional learning for the kids. And it was secular approach to yoga that they were teaching. However, some of the yoga teachers in the implementation of the program had brought in like a mandala while the kids were waiting in line for a study that they were doing on the yoga program. The kids were getting restless waiting in line. From what I understand, they had a mandala, like color this in. And then another yoga teacher had put up a picture of a yoga deity or something on a wall. And it was those kinds of things that made the Christian community uncomfortable. And, you know, in all fairness, I can understand that. So it created a misunderstanding of what they were delivering in the school. And those two things weren't part of the program. Those were things that the teachers had done. And so it wasn't aligned with what they were hoping to do with the school. All that to tell you that they did win, and it never went beyond the California decision. So they won in that they were allowed to keep their yoga program, and and they were saying this is a secular social emotional learning program that wasn't religious and therefore appropriate for schools. And since then there hasn't been another one.
Well, I
Um,
think that's why this is such a, I'm so glad we brought this up because that moment, Catherine, had you not reached out and had you not provided that extra research support, that was a catalyst for everything that we do even today because it's such an important research article or story that we can all point to, right? And to your
yeah.
point, there hasn't been another one because it was covered, it was clear, it was simple.
And then I wrote with two other yoga in schools people. We published that article, and what we had done is I took a team of my students from the University of Buffalo, the doctoral students. We went and we interviewed teachers. We interviewed the yoga teachers, the school teachers, administrators involved in delivering the program, and even some of the researchers from University of San Diego, and then compiled, analyzed that, and gave a whole list of the findings that what it felt like for the district to go through a lawsuit, what were people feeling about it. And so that's published. And then I worked with two other colleagues to write an article on guidance for schools. It's also published and is available. Like you just go on Google Scholar, you can find these articles. You just search my name and put secular, and you'll find them both articles on what to do to make sure that you're delivering the yoga program in a secular manner. And then I also reference both those articles and a how-to in the book that we just talked about. So it was an opportunity to really ground the field and say, here's what we need to do to be in schools, right? And then kind of pivot to a effective way of delivering the programs.
Yeah, beautiful. And from that, I want to read what you have on your homepage. I
Oh,
am on a journey through research, service, teaching, and yoga to empower individuals to be self-regulated. I have found that for many, this means that self-regulation must be embodied and it must be a practice. And that is everything that you're talking about. You're
mhm.
not only interested in the practice, but the research behind it.
Yes. It's funny, I was just talking to, I do other work, and I was talking to a psychologist at the VA and just saying how I'm so passionate about this work, passionate about the work because I want to, I guess, in part, save people from the adolescence and young adulthood that I had from not having these skills. And as I've learned the skills, I gained access to my own body and my own sense of value, purpose, and meaning that I didn't have access to when I couldn't connect to my body. People say like figuring out your values, figuring out your life mission or why you're here. I guess dharma, right? We call you can't. It's really it's not a cognitive act. It's an act that comes from your body, your belly, your heart, the way your body wants to move, what excites it. And so if you don't have access to your body, and I was always a smart enough kid, but it's not something you can think through. You have to drop in to what's happening. And I guess this is where we get access to, I don't know what some like yoga philosophy will call like the big S self, but the self that's connected to a deeper sense of your meaning and purpose and the big web of being human. So,
I love it. That's a perfect segue to your book, The Worry
Right,
Monster, because you've done such a beautiful job of weaving in yoga and mindfulness into a storybook. What inspired you to write this book?
it was a patient. So I was working with a patient, and she was telling me, and it's okay, I tell the story with her. She was telling me how that worried, and she was, and the anxiety, and we are talking about the process that her brain was going through, just this kind of feeding. And the initial concept was that how we kind of feed our worries. And it's like it's this monster that we just keep tossing more more worries onto, and it gets bigger and out of control to where it almost feels unmanageable. And that was the beginning of the seed of the idea. And it changed because it ended up, it's not food, and that doesn't make sense in that way. But but this is where I got to thinking about the book. And so then what is it? And this notion of how we can take something that's really good. And I'm a parent of two daughters, and I want them to be a little worried about things. Like if you're walking alone in the dark and who's driving the Uber and are they sober? I mean, there's things that are really important to pay attention to and be a little worried about. How are you crossing the street? Did you feed the dog? So not perfectionistic compliance, but like a conscientiousness. So worry is our friend. And then what happens when we don't know how to have a relationship with it? And that's where it gets bigger. And so for the worry monster, you can see he's a pretty cute guy. This is Lena Podesta's work. She's a illustrator. I think Portland, Oregon, I think, but she's an illustrator, amazing, brilliant. So too, where here, this is one of the scariest, just a trigger warning.
Yeah.
This full monster. So you can see over here. And this is how brilliant Lena is. So you can see here, he starts out, he's starting to spiral, but look at how he's mostly blue. And then I didn't tell her, she does this. Do you see how here it gradually, the color changes too?
Oh,
So he
cute. Yeah.
changes, like you don't even notice it as you're reading, but she uses color, she uses placement, she uses size, she uses all these really brilliant illustrator, I guess, tools to create emotion in the book. And here's him spiraling. Here's another. So she's so good at like this. Isn't that what that feels like when you're worrying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Like a spiral.
it's like, oh, I'm gonna have a so worry monster is in a lurch because he gets to worrying and it gets so out of control that he gets full monster and he's scary. So when he gets scared, he's kind of scary. And I think a lot of us can relate to that,
Mhm.
right? And now all of a sudden, not only is the emotion bad, but I'm bad and my relationships aren't working. And so he needs to figure out what do I do when I get worried so that here he is in the beginning and he knows this. He's saying, he says these kinds of there he has worries that help him feel safe. And here, look at he's helping his friends because he's concerned across the so his
Crossing the
worries
street.
are good and they help him, but sometimes they spiral. And he's going to learn in the book to have a relationship with them using mindfulness and yoga.
And for those of you listening on the podcast, if you can't see Catherine showing pages of the book, so go to YouTube and you'll be able to see Catherine's
Oh, so some of this
visualization
is,
of,
yeah.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think coming back to what you were saying before is that it's a whole body. It's a subtle body, it's our physical body, our mental, emotional. I think about it was like a month ago or so, my daughter is 14, a freshman, and they had to write poems for their English class. And she came, funny enough, I just thought of it. She was talking about anxiety as a monster. And this poem blew my mind. I had no idea how insightful she was about how the worries drive her. Like from the beginning of the day, it was kind of like a day in the life of like what it's like to wake up in the morning and decide what you have to wear and then go to the different classes and things like that. And so, talk to us a little bit more about your research around how it affects a child's behaviors and emotions and all layers of their body.
Yeah. Well, so about somewhere between, and it could be 15 to 20% of children can experience clinical levels of anxiety. So this is not rare. And then just subclinical and feeling unmanageable anxiety happens in so many of us, probably most of us at some point. And there's no doubt about the world being kind of feeling unmanageable right now. So that
Mm.
adds an underlying kind of brings the threshold a little closer for all of us. So for your daughter, it sounds like it came out in kind of ruminative thinking. So that's one way it comes out. Each kid's different. Some kids become very quiet, withdrawn, ruminate, They don't reach out. They become less likely to reach out. Other kids act out.
Mm.
So there's an interesting phenomenon that can happen for some people. I think it's very human, but rather than having a conflict or worry inside, I'd rather have a conflict outside, one that feels like I can manage. So I might start something that feels like I can manage, whether it's a dispute or trouble with a friend or my mom or your parent. And so it's very externalized. Some kids get somatic symptoms. So they feel lightheaded, they can feel sick to their stomach. When you're extraordinarily anxious, you can feel like you're going to throw up. You can feel like you're going to have diarrhea. They become, if you have unmanageable anxiety, it can shift into a fear response. And fear responses include allocating all your resources to your gross motor muscles. So you can become very activated. Your glucocorticoids increase, your heart rate increases, the activation of your central nervous system increases, your immune system stops, your digestive system stops. And what that means for some is I'm going to get rid of the food or things I have in my body, and it can feel very physical. And then they feel sick. And so here a parent might be like, every time there's a test, they're sick and not put it together. And so we call it like psychosomatic. And it doesn't mean it's not real. This is really happening. The person can really throw up. So psychosomatic doesn't mean not real or to invalidate. It means the source has to do with needing a better way to manage the anxiety so their body can function.
Mm.
And I probably missed a few ways, but that's a
Yeah.
breadth of what can happen if a kid gets anxious.
I love what you're saying there too, because we are detectives as educators and families, right?
Yeah.
And always looking under the surface, and not always do we have the time and space to do so. Like when you need to get out the door, you need to get out the door. But
Right.
it's those moments of contemplation and reflection that we can really think about what you were talking about there is, okay, what's underneath that anxiety? How does it present in my child or the student in my classroom, right? So you're going underneath that. And then even when you kind of get a sense of, okay, there's some rumination or they're at the nurses throughout the day, or whatever that is. I also love your approach to befriending your worries. In the book, The Worry Monster, you're offering 7 skills or practices, right? And so, can you talk a little bit more about how do we lean in to worries instead of making it like there's something bad and wrong with me?
Right. That's intentionally why I started the book with worries can be so helpful. We don't want to banish them. The other thing that can happen in our culture sometimes is that somehow and it's not everywhere, ubiquitous, but it's the notion that if someone gets emotional, it's bad. So I think that comes from that when we have emotions, especially if they're big or important emotions, we also get state activated. And some
Mm.
people who are in the yoga field know about that kind of window of tolerance or moving into from out of our comfort zone into this growth zone that's uncomfortable and then into fight, flight, freeze. And so what happens is if we aren't really good at being with our emotions, right, then we tend to go right into state activation, which is the worry monster is in fight. He's
Mm.
and sometimes just completely shut down. There's one image where he's like, "Wow, I can't." So by
Mm.
befriending the emotions, it's really important, and saying, "Oh, it's not you; it's my own relationship with being kind of activated that's important, right? That I kind of can self-soothe and befriend the emotions. That's important." So we lean in, and if we make the whole thing pathological or bad, that you're, oh, look how emotional you are, we really miss um, the bigger picture of what do emotions do. And
Mm.
so I'm gonna blow past any kind of like good soundbite because I'm gonna say one more piece. Our emotions are there, and this, it's hard to in a children's book, but the problem under the problem, which you were kind of referring to, but what's this underneath that's happening? Our emotional system was designed to give us information about relationships, relationship with yourself, relationships with others, and your relationship with your core values, right? Like where you're headed. So they give you information about all of that. evolved really for to mammals who survive based on relationships. Like mothers feed their young. We are mammals. We survive. So mammals tend to have a deeper active emotional experience to tell us how our relationship's going with your tribe,
Mm.
with your right. So if we ditch those because they're bad,
Mm.
we're losing a whole big aspect of our system for being with others.
Mm.
So worry, what he does is he is like, in the book, he's like, will you help me? So the first thing he does is say, emotions are like this emotion can be helpful sometimes. And also, oh, can you help me? So I'm going to connect to my emotions and value it, but I'm going to value relationships through this whole book. And so this book, when you read it, the child is helping worry the whole time. So it starts with valuing and connection, and then you learn the tools to hold the connection, hold the value, have a feeling, and at the very end, not to spoil it, but he wants to go on a field trip with his friends and to the museum, and in the end, the big picture at the end, he's standing there, and he's not the center of the world. The big dinosaur is that they're all looking at, and he's there with all his little friends, no kind of different from them. They're all really different. He's in his unique self, but he's not the center. He gets to be with his group and be in a moment connected to, this beautiful museum, connected to his own heart and connected to his friends because he kind of stopped and made friends with his anxiety. It's a
Love
lot
that.
right
Can you
there. Sorry.
can you describe three of those practices out of the seven that you have in the book?
Yeah, I was trying to think which ones are good. They're all good is why, so it's hard to pick. And also, what I
Mm.
love about this book, my mom was an English teacher, and my father a physics teacher, and then went on to be like a principal and superintendent. But they were teachers at heart. And so the person that teaches worry, the mindful monster moves, is a teacher. So that's pretty cool too. So that shout out to all the teachers. This really honors your role in social emotional learning. I love yoga. So in the book, he's stretching. The first one is just this idea of stretching and then really tapping on either side. And so kind of bringing a bit of hemispheric integration. This I'm crossing over the center line here and the stretching and then some breathing. So getting back into the body. And when we do that to solve a problem, it's really good, but it's also really good to do that when there is no problem so that when we have a problem, it's way easier to access the tool. So that's one is anytime you can get the kids moving intentionally, mindfully in their bodies, using movement to ground and connect and soothe, and then also using their breath to really bring that together. So we do in yoga, we do asana um, before pranayama. So it's the grounding movement and then the breathing. Super helpful. Um, let's see.
I just want to highlight what you're saying there too. This is a book to come back to time and time again, and the
Yeah.
practices are to come back to time and time again. So you could even use it as there's seven of them. So that my teacher brain thinks, you could do one a week, for example, like read the story and then break apart one a week or one every 7 days, whatever that is, right? But the favorite thing that we talk about here at Kids Yoga Stories is we love stories and success stories, but it's really in the moment. I want to highlight what you said there that, often I hear educators say, "Oh, I'll do that later when we have more time. Our curriculum's
Yeah.
too busy," right? But it's in the little tiny bits throughout the day that the children learn these practices. So, if it's a morning meeting or transitions or after recess or whatever, before a test, if you're doing these little practices throughout your school day, it doesn't take a lot of time. It can be 30 seconds, it can be 1 minute, right? But one of my favorite stories is one of our school counselors, Amy, in our community. She was doing these Mindful Monday announcements. And because the children were learning the breaths, in this case, it was a figure 8 breath, when they came up on a crisis moment, they were all able to access that breath,
Right.
and that's what you're talking about. You're talking about if the classrooms, the teachers, the therapists are and even families are practicing this on a regular, consistent basis, making it natural, making it part of their own so that they're empowered. This is a worry monster. They could create their own character,
Oh
right? They
yeah,
could
and that would
make
be a
it, they could
fun
make it their
activity to
own,
do, right? With
right?
yes.
They
Yeah.
could draw it. They could make a clay, that, whatever character that works for them to make it their own.
And then you can then how do I befriend it? How do I practice my skills? So my husband likes to say success is when preparation meets opportunity. And so in
Yes.
school, it's the same way. So if I'm wanting the class to calm down and we have no notion of what calm feels like, where are we
Mm,
going? Like what does that
mm,
even mean? Right? What does it mean to settle? What does it mean to ground and let your body settle? What does calm mean? And so when each day you have a few minutes of just sitting, feeling your body in your chair, you might put your hands on your heart and see if you notice your heartbeat. And then you might breathe in just 4. And this is one of the techniques too. And you can breathe out for 4 or even extend it to 5. And everybody's noticing, doing a body scan, noticing their bodies, right? And then we'll like, oh, and we might share, like, oh, my belly's softer. My thoughts are quieter. My heart's beating
mm,
slower. My muscles are soft. And then, oh, this is where we could go when things
mm,
start feeling a little unravelly, like we're that we can, oh, we all have a shared experience of like, oh, but also we have this where we could go. And I don't know where that is unless I practice it. Another
mm,
rule in kind of neuropsychology, like that whole neurons that wire together, fire together is one of them. So this idea that I can pay attention and ground, and I'm going to create this neural network in my brain that this is possible. The other one is our repeated experiences become our expectations. And what we call this is state to trait learning. So the more times I can teach a little body
mm,
how to be mindful and settled, and or better yet have a big feeling and learn how to self-regulate, right? To that I could become a kid first who practices mindfulness things, practices being settled, practices self-regulating. I that can move that into a trait with
mm.
repeated experiences. It becomes kind of a neural pathway I can access. It could become more of who I am. You don't lose your personality. Your personality ends up in this body that is able to like ground when it needs to and get excited when it wants to. And it doesn't need to feel so out of control because you can like adjust and move and right. So they become someone who practiced mindfulness to someone who can be mindful. I'm mindful, right? Um, Someone
I
who
love
can
what you said.
settle to someone who's settled. So it's just this repeated practice though. And we know this from the research. So we do an 8-week intervention, right? The people that maintain the practice maintain the outcomes longer. So it's different than like, you know, um, something where I don't know, I can't think of a good example because most things I think take practice to maintain the outcomes in psychology. Like it really is about developing new practices. So it isn't like, oh, I did yoga, so now I'll always be calm kind of thing. You have to
Right.
keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to repeat what you said there. I love that. I haven't heard it in that context, but the calm, the coming back to. Unless what were the words you said that you're creating that space in the classroom?
Well,
If you
there's a place to go. Like it's a
there's a
place that
place to
a lived
go.
experience. So you
There's a
think of the
place to
word
go.
can. So embodiment is a really cool word, but no one, it's such a weird word that often languages don't have a way to. Like I had a visiting scholar from Brazil, and he had to use the word embodiment English because there was no word. Like so mindfulness and
Mm,
embodiment tend not to have words in other languages. It's why you'll see books that have like they'll just use the English word. So it's
mm,
really fascinating. So they're kind of abstract. Like, what do you mean? So if I want a kid to be embodied, what the heck am I even talking
right.
about? So it's a lived experience. And think of the notion of I can versus I know. And I think of it almost like a soup can, like it's a
Mm,
container. Like I can means this body knows it can because I did. Like I have a
yeah.
lived experience of what that is. So I have a really like embodied or canny experience of that, oh, yeah, settled. We've all like that place we went yesterday, right? And it's like here, where we talk about uncanny, and it's like it's too heady, we haven't done it, it's abstract, so we want it to be here. Does that make sense? It's kind of a,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
love that so much. I love that. And it's beyond what you're saying too. It's beyond what it's going to look different for everyone,
Mhm.
right? So sometimes we have this misconception like calm, especially in a classroom, means everybody's quiet and sitting, doing their work. But that doesn't always, there's lots of ways to be calm and mindful that might look different. If it's a lived experience, it's
Mhm.
going to look different for everyone. It's going to be a creation of that group, that dynamic.
Yeah, that's
Right.
interesting. It'd be a fun activity, like do the body scan, have everybody settle, and then describing or drawing or making a figure of like some kind of what does that feel like in your body. Sometimes what
Mm,
I even do is I just give patients a blank piece of paper, and then I have the big boxes of crayons. I have two dumped in a basket, so you could get access to any color you want, and then just draw, like color what you're noticing in your body. Like sometimes I'll use a figure, but for some patients, especially if they're younger, I just have them put it on the paper. And then I'm like,
mm,
tell me what's this? Tell me what this is like. And it's like, oh,
mm.
this is that kind of worried part that's like, and they'll be like, it's right here. It's not even, and for people just listening, I'm referring to just past my head. So they'll be, or and this is where my belly gets really contracted, and it's like dark box, like so you can.
Mm.
Now that I've drawn it, I can talk about it and describe it. It'd be a fun activity to just be like, what is it like for you when we do
Right,
an activity like this and we're settling?
right. Can you tell us a story
A
about,
story. Oh,
yeah,
I'm trying to
about
think. I think I had
this
one
is
more.
where,
You said tell three things,
oh,
and
yes.
so having a little tiny bit of OCD, I'm like, I didn't say a third thing. But there's one that's in here that's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is everyone knows this now. I think with the five things you see, the four things. So we did that, and that's in there, and then riding the worry wave, which is distress tolerance and just staying with the worry as it rises and passes. So that's an example of two more skills. So a story. I know I was thinking about different. I think the biggest one is, and I work with people of all ages. Like I have a client who's 3, and I have clients in their 60s, and so.
Mhm.
But I think the most powerful moment, especially in a therapeutic, you can call them like a corrective therapeutic experience, is when I can be with a child while they're having anxiety, right? And this is an example from a long time ago. But remember on December 12th in 2012, when everybody thought the world was going to end? I don't know if you know, remember that. I don't even know why. Was it the Mayan calendar or something weird? The world was going to end. And we actually had an appointment. So I was a psychologist at 12 because she was so scared that we were all going to die. And then I was just thinking too, also a little bit of me was like, well, what if this is what I'm doing at the moment the world ends?
Right.
So this is the moment, like where you're like, so when you get to be with somebody, the opportunity to be with somebody, just like you get to be with worry in this book, when they're having that, like the emotion is getting so big, right?
Mm,
And it's like, okay, I'm with you, and we're not trying to stop the anxiety. We're just trying to the notion of creating. We're doing some stuff so that as it rises and passes, we're okay. And if always, when it rose, things get really not okay and I bail on myself or I act out or I hide or I become incapacitated in some way, this is going to be this really therapeutic corrective experience where I can go up. And so in this case, it's like, 11:59 and then just like grounding the feet, like, right? Like if it means some self-soothing side to side. I don't have it in the book, but just rocking side to side can be like so helpful. Um, so we're rocking side to side, doing some deep breathing, extended breaths, and then the moment and it passed. And then it's like, well, would you look at that? Like, there it is. Wow. you
It's
know?
co-regulation that you're speaking about, right? Is to
Yeah.
have the honor of witnessing and holding space for somebody to go through that experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And it's just it's healing. So then it really, because the person had the lived experience now, even within the context of co-regulation, they're really prepared
Mm.
to believe. They don't have to believe in like, oh, I believe in myself with no absolute experience of, that. But this is like I believe because I know I did it. I had a lived experience of that,
Mm.
right?
I love it. Can you talk about a common misunderstanding of teachers and educators about worry for children?
Well, a big thing that we don't want to do, is that it's bad, that there's
Mm.
something that we don't want to approach it like there's something to fix. So it would be the idea is like, oh, I'm going to name the anxiety and I'm going to even validate. Like I could see it makes so much sense you'd feel anxious right now, you know? Like, you're presenting, you have to sit through 5 classes and you're doing a presentation in front of the whole class on a topic that you're new to. It makes so much
Mm.
sense that you would be, ruminating and sweaty or whatever happens. It totally makes sense. As opposed to like, you're fine. It'll be fine. You always do well. You're such a good kid, la, 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 which kind of what is the term where everybody's using is like gaslights or like invalidates. And it's like,
Mm.
no, like it makes total sense. And, um, and there's a part of you that's like taking this so seriously and it's good. And so let's ground and breathe, do a few things to have a relationship with this part of you that's taking this extraordinarily seriously. Um, and breathe our way through it, right? And then it'll be I can. And then the next time that someone has to present, it's going to come from this place of like, ta-da. And ta-da comes from tadasana. Did you know?
Oh, really?
Yes, this is a root.
I did
Ta-da! Mountain pose. When people go, ta-da, it's mountain pose.
did
So
not know that.
the other
Oh.
part that doesn't happen enough, which the book's last page is like kind of the celebration of I did it, is that kind of there's gratitude in here, but it's like, thank you. And look what we did.
Mm.
So it's the pausing and really pressing on the button of like, wow, like that was hard and I did it. My heart was beating. I still grounded my feet and my breath was going and I slowed it. I extended my exhale, right? Even though I was having these thoughts, I like slowed my thoughts a little as I slowed my heart. So in yoga, I would
Mm.
say like, as goes your breath, so goes your heart. As goes your heart, so go your thoughts. Deep, right? Breath, deep settled breath, deep settled heartbeat, and we can have deeper, more settled thoughts. So it's this like, look what I saw that. Wow. And then you can self-validate like, no one saw. I did it. I did it.
Love
Yay.
that.
Ta-da.
I love it too. Speaking to what you're talking about before, too, I think another one of the common misunderstandings you were mentioning earlier is a reminder that those behaviors on top of the worry, those are the things we often see above the iceberg. And I think that for so many people, educators that who aren't in or parents who aren't in this field or not doing this work, it can be very easy to see a child on the couch, speaking from experience, on the couch watching TV for like paralyzed, fight, flight, or freeze, like a frozen
Shut
motion,
down because it's a
or
paper
a
due. Mhm.
yeah, or it's a temper. It's a tantrum. It's a, like you said, acting out. Like all these other bigger behaviors can, the anxiety can sit underneath that. So we're addressing,
Problem underneath the problem.
yeah. So
That's a
we're
really
the
therapeutic
misunderstanding.
thing. Mhm.
Yeah. So we're addressing the wrong
Get off the
thing.
couch, get going. You have a report due. Get over there. Well, and it's lovely because you can kind of rescue them from their own internal conflict and they can fight with you. So what
Yes.
we want to do is like, what we want to do with a dysregulated brain, an escalated brain, right? Is we want to We want that brain, and there's a lot more to this, but it's in connection or protection mode, defensive mode. So
Mm,
anything you do that's a bit like, right, can feel like an offense. And
mhm.
then I'm going to defend myself. So we want to come from our own really grounded, open hearted space and connect. Hey, you okay? You know, I know you have the paper due. That could be enough because they're already in protection mode, like, what? And it's like, all right, you know, like I'm here. And if you need anything, because it's already pretty hard being down there. And you say something like, sometimes it's helpful to just get up and get your body moving, step one. And if they're open to advice, but it is coming from a very regulated, grounded place as opposed to you co-escalating,
Yeah.
which is what their nervous system is ready to go full monster and you go full monster and then you guys go at it. Um,
Yeah.
so that really
I love that.
grounding,
I love what you're saying too. I'm thinking about highlighting some things you're saying. There's nothing to fix.
right?
It isn't always going to go on a timeline that you're hoping for, and for them to not take away their experience. Because I was thinking about last summer before sleepaway camp, my daughter was literally on the couch for like a week, but underneath that, she was terrified. Like the anxiety was off the charts about going to sleepaway camp by herself. But I tried all these different, shout out to Ross Green too, right? I love his work. I talk about that a lot, the collaborative problem solving that usually works for us. Like, I can see you're on the couch a lot and I can see you're, moving. You've got sleepaway camp, whatever. So we go through that whole process. But I think that one of the hardest things as a parent and a teacher is just to allow them space and time because not everybody goes through it quickly. Some folks, some young people have to go, especially if those are ones that are maybe neurodiverse or very compromised. She still went through it. She still got on the bus, and then there's that moment of like I was writing to her, like, you did it. It's amazing. But it's this reminder to ourselves to not rush the process.
It's hard, and I know people are on
Mhm.
timelines and all of that. This is why another reason why to if the practices are built into non-emergent daily
Mhm.
practices, then it can be like, hey, remember how getting, just walking around the other day got us all laughing, you
Yeah.
know, remember how um, extending your breath, Tuesday helped the heart rate just go down and cleared your thoughts a bit. So we want to think a big mechanism of change for yoga in particular is behavioral activation. Is that we do better to feel better, right? And so if they've had the lived experience of I've done things so that I notice that I feel better, right? That I will believe you more when you're suggesting it when I'm incapacitated on the couch because I've done it and it
Yeah.
and I know in my body that it can shift. So that's where our kind of pre-loading the practice has us prepared for those moments when a person does feel incapacitated. Um, and the most important thing for them to do is to move, right? But I want to move in service of, I want to move intentionally and in
Mm.
service of myself, as opposed to externally and out of like reaction again, because that's really
Mm.
activating the whole protection. So our goal is to get them to have that internal notion of moving and that they're going to mobilize not out of fear, not of reaction, but out of like intentional movement for what they're wanting to do. And that's it's
Mm.
tough. It's a very mature, it's a tough thing to go, but that's what we're going for is to give kids the capacity to do that. So if they're at work or at college or so we're setting them up to like, oh, I've been here and I know how to do this. I was coached by my parent or my teacher through a time when I was immobilized and incapacitated, and I know the steps to take, and I've done it.
Catherine, thank you so much. You've been so incredibly generous and given us practical tips and the science behind it. For everyone listening, if you were to say sort of one in your parting words, one step or one thing that people can take away, what would you say?
Well, whenever somebody comes to a book signing, I write the same thing in all the books. I say, take good care of your worry monster.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. How do we find you online, Catherine, and what's next for you?
So Catherine Cook-Cottone, .com. So and I'm the only person on the world with that name. So one benefit hyphenating. No one will have your name. So it's just CatherineCookatone.com. And then I have, you can have links to the books and I have a whole model that I work with. We have a really tremendous bunch of research on mindful self-care. My colleague Wendy Geiker and I created a scale that you can use. This is for use with teachers and physicians. It's been used by the NIH and the Mayo Clinic, and it's in like 7 different languages to build a self-care practice, which is also important. So there's all that. It's kind of unwieldy, the webpage, so just take your time and and search around. But it's meant to just empower you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate it. It's been so lovely to spend this time together.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.